Has it been a while since you flipped that thermostat from heat to cool? Turn to the experts at Griffith Energy Services before you do for an $88 AC start and check to make sure your AC is in tip-top shape. Griffith specializes in Carrier, but services all brands. Visit GriffithEnergyServices.com today. Your local Carrier expert. That's GriffithEnergyServices.com. License number MD-HVACR 01-2278.
Griffith Energy Services. Doggone dependable.
Welcome to another edition of Progress for Tomorrow, a program dedicated to bringing you a progressively unifying message, one which transcends sociological, cultural, philosophical, and even ideological barriers. So join the crew of what we call the Mothership, as we will also examine areas in our past, present, and future as we strive toward progress for tomorrow. Greetings, folks. This is Mark and Gary once again with another session of Progress for Tomorrow. Welcome to the Starship P4T. Glad to have you with us as always during this podcast. And we are going to begin another conversation. We had a series of programs in 3 parts where we took a look at what went wrong with evangelicalism and hope that you've enjoyed that. We're going to kind of tie in a lot of some of the other things because what we're looking to do is what's going hand in hand with what we face and the elements by which that threaten our very democracy and our very existence. So now we're going to get more into the political arena. We're going to discuss about methods and madness. You can really take both of those words and take a look at both of them. And correlate the madness that we are being witness to, and then the methods that are being utilized in order to bring about and to continue to further this madness that we happen to be experiencing, the madness that could lead to the very end of our democracy. So, and then with that said, we're going to discuss the proper methods that we should use in order to deal with this madness, because you got to have a strategy. We've been saying it, be wise as serpents, innocent as doves. But yes, with what we face, there are certain methods and strategies that we can use, and very effective ones. It's not difficult. It's not rocket science. But before we get any further in the discussion, without any further ado, I want to introduce, as always, my good friend and first officer of the Starship P4T, Mr. Mark Pruitt. Mark, how are you today?
I'm doing just fine. Good morning. Happy Sunday morning. Welcome aboard the Starship P4T. Let's get this show going. It's going to be exciting today.
Yes, and I look at this season. Now, we may be able to get through this season with some 13, maybe 16 episodes. But I can guarantee you that all of these episodes, and I like to keep them short. That's why sometimes I'll break up one session that we go over an hour to 90 minutes so that they're 3 programs. So they're a little bit shorter because it's easy on the ears and easy on time. So, but yet we are really want to be laser focused and laser sharp in what we do in presenting what we bring to you in this dispensation, this 5th season of Progress for Tomorrow. Now, when we hear about those 2 words together, there's a method to my madness, or madness and methods, you could take it either way. But how I came up with it was at the tail end of our last taping, was we began to talk about, as we begin to prepare and look forward to this next series of episodes, we began to talk about Mr. Merrick Garland, our recent Attorney General of the United States. All right. We were very happy when he got that position. We felt that it was a long time coming for him. We felt that it was well justified for what he had experienced in his ordeal when he was nominated for the Supreme Court. And the methods and madness, or madness to my method, is what I utilized or thought towards in that direction when, despite all of the trouble that has been surrounding his early tenure with some of the missteps and decisions that he's made, I seem to find that his decision to go full force or to put a full court press on voter suppression was a great decision. Voter suppression is at the very core of what we're dealing with today, because if we're able to protect our right to vote, if we're able to do, let's face it, when you talk about voting, to me, and I know, Mark, I know you feel the same way because we've talked about this. When we're talking about voting, every living, breathing American, okay, has a God-given right and a civic duty to go out and vote. Let me say that again. Every living, breathing American in this country. I'm not going to get it caught up into their neutralization status. We want to assume if you're here in this country that you should be here legally, okay? But again, when we're talking about every living, breathing American, we're talking about people who was born here, people who are here legally, people who are contributors to this democracy, to this society, and that you are eligible to vote by way of your registration and your status. But like I said, let's put all that aside. The bottom line here is that every living, breathing American, I'm saying this again, every living, breathing American has the God-given right, all right, to exercise their right to vote, and it is their civic duty to go out and vote. So when we find measures being taken, okay, in order to suppress that activity, in order to deny or to circumvent our God-given right, to circumvent our civic duty, something is very, very wrong, okay? And if we find no encumbrances to our ability to vote, then we, the people, decide on the leaders that we want to govern us. All right. And if there is no voter suppression, Ted Cruz wouldn't be in the Senate House. I can tell you right now. OK, let's just run down the list, because what I want to do here is I want to be fair to Mr. Garland, because I'm going to praise him and give him dap and give him honor for his efforts of attacking voter suppression, because it is very, very crucial. Without voter suppression, Ted Cruz would be gone. Beto O'Rourke had him on the ropes. He had his ass beat. That race should have been won. Lindsey Graham should have been beat down in that race, this most recent race. Okay? The guy who was running against him, his name eludes me at the moment, but he is now the Democratic chair. But still, he should have won that race. Okay? Mitch McConnell would be gone. He had a formidable opponent going up against him. Okay, Susan Collins would be gone, most definitely, without voter suppression. All right, let's look to some of the governor's races, namely in Georgia. Stacey Abrams would right now be the governor of Georgia and not Brian Kemp, had it been not for voter suppression. Okay, and different tactics that the GOP has used and has incited to use going all the way back to 1980. We're going to talk about that in order to suppress the vote. Okay, so attacking voter suppression is a good move by Merrick Garland. And I looked at that decision at that time when the news came out and he did his press conference. I was excited. I once again was back. Okay, oh man, it sounds like he's laying the axe to the root of the tree. That's what I said, Mark. He was laying the axe to the root of the tree. But then reports continually began to come out regarding his missteps, because not only did he sought to defend the former presidents in his lawsuit by E. Jean Carroll, who was going after him civilly, and we know all about that story. He compounded that misstep by his inability to follow up on what was clearly 10 counts of obstruction of justice in the Mueller report. He refused to question and challenge and to restore civility and jurisprudence to the Justice Department by looking over all of those criminal offenses by the previous administration, all the criminal offenses alleged to or committed by the previous president. All right. And he continues to whitewash that. Then the straw that broke the camel's back for me was how he is looking, if not has already decided, that he will fight or look to have the civil suit filed against the Trump, Bill Barr, and other members who were involved in the Lafayette Park slaughter of those protesters, those Black Lives Matter protesters who went to peaceful protests, but they wouldn't clear them out by gassing them, shooting them with rubber bullets, and then hitting them with batons. I mean, it was a prime example of what the clown referred to himself by, you got to go out and dominate these people. Well, that's what they did. Okay. Civil rights were violated that day, namely the civil right, the most important one, free speech. That was violated that day. Okay. As well as other people's human rights and how they were handled, abused, and it was a terrible scene. And then to cap it off, with the clown standing up there with a Bible in his hand. You know, when I finally saw that video clip of that, Mark, because I don't like listening to the man. I don't want to see the man. But when I saw that shot of him holding, first of all, it was a blank book. The only way you would know it was a Bible is if you read the spine of the book. And it was upside down, which everybody knows. But it was a poor display of lunacy. It was a poor display of authoritarianism. It was a horrific display of one of the most insane things that I've ever seen a president do in my lifetime. And we're going back very, very long. Okay. But yet Merrick Garland can't find it within himself. He doesn't have the stomach to do justice for those who were abused, beaten, gassed, and struck with rubber bullets. No, he can't find it within himself to stand for the civil rights of human beings. And I don't care what organization that they represent, okay? All right. But it seems, once again, here we are again. It seems very strange that when it comes to Black Lives Matter, when it comes to anything progressive involving minorities and black people, that justice is nowhere to be found. Wow, I wonder how that happens. But here we go again. All right. Now, there are methods that I'm going to talk about, but there's methods that I'm going to use in our conversation. But first, I want to turn it over to you, Mark, because as I've just laid out, we talked about a week or so ago about, yes, we were excited. Merrick Garland, yeah. Voter suppression, go after it, go get him. Full court press, we need more lawyers, is what he said. But then he still, like I said, it puts me in a very difficult spot where it really challenges me. Because on one hand, the fight against voter suppression is most crucial, if anything else. But how can you close your eyes? And then there's also suspicion that he is going to have thrown out the lawsuits levied against the clown for the January 6th insurrection. There are several members of Congress, namely Eric Swalwell, who have filed lawsuits against Trump and the administration, everybody who was involved in that. And he did it strategically because he wants to get names. He's going to get information. There's other things that are going to come out by even members of Congress on the GOP side who were involved in that insurrection. And now I'm saying it's not confirmed, but there's suspicions that Garland is going to have that lawsuit drop. So when I heard that, I was like, what in the hell is going on? So now, Mark, I want your thoughts. I mean, we started out thinking method to his madness, But it looks like the only method that he's contributing to is more madness, because unless, let's just hope and pray that his efforts against voter suppression, he's already filed a lawsuit against the state of Georgia, great. But let's just hope that this doesn't go the same way as all these other cases that we have been waiting and hanging on the ledge for in order for justice to be done against this criminal administration from the past and this criminal president, former president. Let's be clear about that too. But I want your thoughts. What does that make you, or how do you feel about the man, Mr. Garland, and his missteps that we really kind of based the idea of this program on?
Gary, to give a better idea, a descriptive definition right now of what we're discussing, this comes from mass support. This is spreading like wildfire. This is exactly spreading like fever. In conjunction with the Brennan Centers for Justice report, as of May 14th, 2021, legislators have introduced 389 bills with restrictive provisions in 48 states. 22 bills with restrictive provisions have already been enacted, in addition to at least about 61 bills with restrictive provisions in 18 states that are actually moving through legislation. And so 31 of those have already passed through one chamber, with another having some sort of committee or action. So there's hearing and amendments to support this. This is where all of this support is coming from. I mean, you have 48 states, so this is all an attempt to demask human rights as far as voting is concerned. It is, and actually, law to introduce this so-called voter suppression law, which is becoming very real. Laws were broken, and this has been illegal ever since the campaign election of 2000, starting when Al Gore, when he won the popular vote, when he clearly won the popular vote,
right.
And what the state of Florida was accused of. No one was prosecuted. That doesn't surprise me. It didn't surprise me then.
Right.
And so, for the fact of Trump or the clown, also there's a possibility of this insurrection, which was committed. This stuff being thrown out is very real. Because of these proposals that they have, and I just can't believe that you have 48 states that could actually turn and enact voter suppression.
Yeah,
it is clearly a criminal act under the legislation. So they're going through loopholes right now.
Right, and I would by you describing that in detail, in graphic detail, Mark, really lays out the importance of the fight, and that's where on the one hand you give. I'm going to give him a nickname, which is Menace Merrick, because it's menace. It's menace, and a menace is when you have a person that you love him to death. You just adore him. You adore that person, but they just do those menacing things that just every now and then it just crops up, and it's menacing. He's doing this fight against voter suppression that really is probably the most important fight and the fight of our lives, particularly when we're talking about the lifeblood of this democracy. So, cheers, and a thumbs up, 2 thumbs up for Merrick in that regard. But then you get menaced by when he looks the other way and all these other things that are going on. So it just, but now I will say this, okay? Because then I began to wonder, well, if you're really serious about going after voter suppression, what are you doing about Arizona? Well, a letter was sent. Okay. That was the first step. We don't know, nor will we know at this point, of who he has or if there is anybody on the ground in Arizona actively investigating. The way the Justice Department operates is almost very similar to two other agencies, the CIA and the NSA. They don't announce, nor do they broadcast what they're doing. We knew when Eric Holder was Attorney General, we heard of dissent decrees and things of that nature, his reviews and audits of different departments, but he never went into detail in terms of what he was doing. He only made his presentation when the investigation and the audit was done. That's the way those type of activities are handed down in the Justice Department. They don't go around announcing everything that they do. Okay, that they don't. The Justice Department, the CIA, and the NSA are very, very, very picky and very particular on how they go about their investigations, and will do whatever it takes and will avoid anything that would compromise such an investigation. So we don't really know everything that's going on, and we don't really know everything that's going on in other cases. So assumption can become our enemy here. But on the surface, it appears that he has failed in addressing some of the most egregious violations of the former Justice Department. In an article that I found from CNN's Cross Exam. Now, I'm not a big CNN fan, but this particular individual, Eli Honig, has written some beautiful pieces. This is on the website at CNN, and it's on the Cross Exam portion. This was written on, I believe it was June the 8th. Let me double check my notes. Yes, it was June the 8th by Eli Honig, and it was discussing about Merrick Garland's missteps. Okay. And he states in his article, during his first 3 months in office, Garland already has had several opportunities to reverse the specific actions and miscalculations of his predecessor. Yet, each time Garland has declined to directly undo Barr's machinations and has opted instead to take a conservative, with a lowercase c, he puts in parentheses, middle path, reflecting on his own institutionalist approach to managing the department. So now Merrick Garland, Menace Merrick, has already been labeled as an institutionalist, in addition to my little comedic nickname, and I don't want to look to use that but I mean, if he keeps doing these menacing things, Mark, please, I'm gonna start pulling the hairs out of my mustache. I mean, for God's sake, it's just, when you see these human, if he seeks for those lawsuits, those civil suits filed by Eric Swalwell and others, if he seeks to have those dismissed and thrown out, I am going to lose my stuff. I'm sorry. I'm going to lose my stuff. I really am. But with
Gary, on a noteworthy commentary on this, the method of misdirection is also used.
Yes.
A big explanation, one word, dissemination again. But the method of misdirection is something that I've thrown in also as one of those methods that is used for control.
Okay. Now, when you talk about misdirection, though, are you saying, be specific on who is using it? Because I could assume that you're talking about Merrick, where he's using misdirection to make it look like he's an institutionalist, when really behind the scenes, he's got people out there getting ready to lower the boom. Who are we specifically talking about when we talk about misdirection?
Well, that is exactly the definition. He is one of the constituents using this method. It's been used for centuries.
Well, true.
It's been used for a long time. Yes.
CIA uses a lot of misdirection, among other things that they use.
Hitler did too. He did too. He used it. It was used by the Romans. Mm-hmm. This is a clear method, and it's being used on us, and not just only in politics, but in other ways, in phases, to get you to tunnel into what the narrative is, on what the intent of the narrative is. Yes, misdirection will always be used.
And it's a very valuable tool in the suitcase of intelligence and investigative workers, because that leaves the subjects not knowing what direction they're coming from. And you always want to maintain that a level of surprise. I mean, in my years working undercover, I mean, the one of the famous things of espionage is being able to fool and to be able to use camouflage, being able to use misdirection to your subject. You don't want to tip your hand. You don't want to let the cat out of the bag, because then you're done. You're finished, and you could lose your life working UC in that regard. But in this case, when we have a rabid fan base or rabid base like we have in these supporters, I hate saying that name, in the supporters of the clown, who threaten, who are organized maliciously with, we're talking about the Oath Keepers, we're talking about the Proud Boys, the 3%ers, and we don't really know all of the other militia groups that are operating behind the shadows. But we know that there have been some heinous acts that have been committed by these militias, murders, maimings, and other things. There have been robberies and burglaries, because they'll steal artillery. They'll steal funds in order to get artillery. So it's something, yes. Misdirection is so write that down as a method. Misdirection. Okay. So great point, Mark. That's an excellent point. But again, I mean, he is indicating publicly, as far as from what we've seen, and Mr. Honig also states in his article, most recently, Garland's Justice Department, he talks about the E. Jean Carroll case. Now, at the time that this was written, all the other things that I had mentioned regarding the lawsuits by Eric Swalwell, the case at Lafayette Park is not mentioned, but he specifically really zeroes in on the numerous machinations of the Justice Department under Bill Barr, and how they whitewashed, covered up, and just outright suppressed, live and prosecutable crimes that were being committed by the clown himself, his other allies like Paul Manafort, General Flynn. I mean, the list goes. I could write a book, and books have already been written, now Malcolm Nance being an author that I have in mind, about these people that have committed these crimes, pardoned and commuted by the clown. So it just, like I said, it's menacing to think on one hand that he's doing making a great decision and a great move by attacking voter suppression. And again, he's not going to tip his hand and tell us everything that he's doing. But that I started out with because that was really the basis. We're hoping that there is a method to Merrick Garland's madness, But now when we're talking about madness and when we're talking about other methods, I'm going to use a method myself, particularly in this instance, and I want to try to be as brief as possible, because you can go on and on when you're dealing with this. But you talked about it the other day. There's something that needs to be in this whole thing about critical race theory and everything. Okay. In fact, as I start this area of our conversation, critical race, first of all, there's no such thing. All right. It's bullshit. It's just another ploy, another catchphrase by the GOP to throw in. They always have to have a hook, and it's just another one of their hooks, another one of their lures. In fishing, we call them fishing lures. You have the true bait, and then you have lures, different things that are cleverly designed to fool fish so that they take the bait and think that it's live bait. No, this is just another one of the GOP's lures to throw out there regarding critical race theory, trying to withhold information from people in terms of educating them, ourselves, educating our children who are our future about the history, the true history of this country. Okay? So, I mean, to talk about it as critical race theory, it's just BS. It's just really, what we're talking about is history, period. And I'm going to play my first clip of General Mark Milley, who is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staffs. who in a most recent hearing this week, now at the time that this broadcast is dropped, it'll be several weeks from that hearing that took place in Congress. Matt Gaetz was the one who was asking the questions, and he had the audacity, the unmitigated gall to talking about is the military become soft because of all this curriculum of critical race theory that is being taught at the military academy, and here's a guy with this goofy looking self that's never served in the military. He would probably be even stupid to try to get a deferment if the draft was still around at his age. But still, this is a guy that's never served. And he had the unmitigated gall to try to come at and to make a run at a 4-star general in the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley. And let's hear how General Milley, being the seasoned, decorated war veteran that he is. Let's listen.
On the issue of critical race theory, et cetera, I'll obviously have to get much smarter on whatever the theory is. But I do think it's important, actually, for those of us in uniform to be open-minded and be widely read. And the United States Military Academy is a university. And it is important that we train and we understand. And I want to understand white rage, and I'm white, and I want to understand it. So what is it that caused thousands of people to assault this building and try to overturn the Constitution of the United States of America? What caused that? I want to find that out. I want to maintain an open mind here, and I do want to analyze it. It's important that we understand that because our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians, they come from the American people. So it is important that the leaders, now and in the future, do understand it. I've read Mao Zedong. I've read Karl Marx. I've read Lenin. That doesn't make me a communist. So what is wrong with understanding, having some situational understanding about the country for which we are here to defend? And I personally find it offensive that we are accusing the United States military, our general officers, our commissioned, non-commissioned officers of being, quote, woke or something else because we're studying some theories that are out there. That was started at Harvard Law School years ago, and it proposed that there were laws in the United States, antebellum laws prior to the Civil War, that led to a power differential with African Americans that were 3/4 of a human being when this country was formed. And then we had a Civil War and Emancipation Proclamation to change it. And we brought it up to the Civil Rights Act in 1964. It took another 100 years to change that. So look it, I do want to know.
That right there deserves a standing ovation. A standing ovation. He eviscerated Goofy. I mean, made him, and then he's just going to sit there and smirk and shake his head. And then to make it even worse for himself, to make himself look even like a more of a foolish coward, which he already is, Matt Gaetz. I want to make sure everybody knows who I'm talking about. He throws a hand grenade from behind his little keyboard on Twitter, talking about, well, it's no wonder that we fought more wars than we won. Well, what wars did you fight in, simpleton? I mean, what part of combat have you seen? That'll bring to an end part 1, which has turned out to be a 3-part presentation in the subject which we refer to as methods and madness. As always, we encourage you to join us for our next episode, where we will pick up with part 2. Until that time comes, we'll see you next week. Be sure to find and follow us on our Twitter page at Prog4 tomorrow. And you can find our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and iHeartRadio.
On the Disney Plus original series, Turning the Tables with Robin Roberts, it's the Robin you know and love, bringing you the stories you've never heard. Join Robin for intimate conversations with some of the biggest icons of our time, where women from all generations create a dialogue about life, struggle, and triumph. At Robin's Table, inspiration comes full circle. Turning the Tables with Robin Roberts. All episodes now streaming on Disney Plus.
Switching to Geico is a good idea, especially when you consider everything.
First off, Geico makes it easy to switch. They have licensed agents available 24/7 online or over the phone.
But if it's so easy, you might start thinking everything is easy, even big wave surfing. And it's not. It's actually quite difficult.
Well, if you switch to Geico, you could save hundreds on car insurance. And you could keep saving by bundling your motorcycle, boat, and RV, plus your home or renter's insurance.
But saving money might lead you to make some questionable purchases, like a 20-foot feather boa. And do you know how hard it is to clean a 20-foot feather boa?
Well, they do have an industry-leading mobile app you can use to pay your bill, file and manage a claim, or add a new driver.
But when life gets a little easier, it makes you too confident, and you start calling everyone Ace. And you're better than that.
Well, Geico has a 97% customer satisfaction rating and has been saving people money for 85 years. It's hard to beat that.
But you're right.
Switch to Geico. It's obviously a good idea.